I
Crystal
like
Gayle.
that. I like that.
It's so great to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Crystal Gayle was once country music's golden girl with floor-length hair that made her famous worldwide. She sold 40 million records and conquered both country and pop charts. But in 2022, something happened that shocked her fans. Over 50,000 people signed petitions begging her not to do it. She had announced plans that would destroy her most iconic feature forever. When recent photos surfaced showing her dramatic transformation, people couldn't believe their eyes. At 74, Crystal looks completely different. What she did to herself will leave you speechless. Crystal Gayle came into the world as Brenda Gayle Webb on January 9, 1951, in Paintsville, Kentucky, the youngest of 8 children in a house where money was always tight and worry never seemed to rest. Her father, Melvin Webb, worked long hours in the coal mines. By the time she was a toddler, he was already fighting black lung disease, a sickness that clung to miners who spent years breathing coal dust. Their tiny cabin had simple meals and almost no comfort, and every winter felt heavier than the last. When she was 4, her father's health forced the family to make an impossible choice. Paintsville had fewer than 3,500 people, and mining was all most families knew. But in 1955, the Webbs packed whatever they could carry and headed to Wabash, Indiana, hoping its hospitals would give Ted Webb a fighting chance. That move hit them hard. Wabash had nearly 10,000 people then, but size didn't mean comfort. They settled in a small community for retired miners, living modestly and watching every penny. Clara, Crystal's mother, found work where she could, first in restaurants and later as a nurse's aide. Almost everything felt unfamiliar. The mountains were gone. The neighbors didn't talk like the folks back home. Even the rhythm of life felt wrong. Indiana families lived on an average income of about $3,000 a year, and the Webbs barely managed that. Crystal was just 4, but even at that age, she felt the weight in the room, the tension in her parents' voices, the fear that followed them after the move. Then everything collapsed in 1959. On February 22nd, her father died at only 48. Crystal was just 8. His death broke the whole house in a way no one could hide. Clara suddenly became a single mother raising 8 children, sometimes working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Crystal carried her grief quietly. She developed a nervous habit from the stress, and a strict doctor told her to stop it. Somehow she did. It was one of the first times she learned what her willpower could do. She later said she felt she had to grow up fast, and anyone who saw her during those years could see how the loss shaped her. She rarely cried, but she held everything. As she got older, music slowly pulled her forward. In 1965, at only 14, she joined the Webbs, the band her brother Melvin played in. She sang backup during school vacations and followed them to Nashville, where the bright lights mixed with long nights and cramped back rooms. She was surrounded by the world that had already embraced her sister, Loretta Lynn, and every time she stepped onto a stage, she felt the shadow of that fame. Reviews often compared them, and for a girl still learning who she was, every comparison cut a little deeper. But these trips shaped her voice. They shaped her confidence too, even when doubt felt louder. By 1969, she finished high school and wondered what came next. College was an option, but her life changed when Loretta's husband, Doolittle Lynn, offered her a spot as an opening act. Road life showed her the truth behind the music dream. The travel was long, the pay was small, the pressure was constant. Still, every show pushed her a little closer to her own path. She realized success wasn't easy, and the business wasn't soft. But she kept going because the stage felt like the only place she belonged. That same year, she had to change her name. Decca Records already had Brenda Lee, so she needed something new. Loretta came up with Crystal while passing a Crystal hamburger sign, and Gayle came from her middle name. It fit her instantly. She became Crystal Gayle at 18, and soon her first single, I've Cried the Blues Right Out of My Eyes, came out in August 1970. It reached number 23 on the Billboard Country chart, marking her quiet but official beginning. Crystal kept recording. Songs like Wrong Road Again showed what she could do, but critics kept calling her Loretta's little sister. Even when a track reached number 6 on the country charts, people acted like she was only walking a path her sister had already cleared. Decca pushed her to sound more like Loretta, and every time she tried something different, they steered her back. It frustrated her deeply. Her debut album in 1974 sold under 100,000 copies in the first year. Not terrible, but not enough for a big breakthrough. She had only 2 top 10 singles by then, and each release felt like the same battle over and over. In 1972, she even recorded Me and the Song with Loretta. It reached number 27 on the country chart, but it made her image problem worse. Industry insiders labeled her a second version of her sister. By late 1972, people at Decca openly debated whether to market her as a copy or try a new angle. The pressure trapped her. She felt like she was losing herself, and backstage tears became common. Interviews from 1973 described her as quiet and tense, and shows sometimes left her questioning if she belonged in the business at all. Still, she tried to experiment. In 1973, she recorded Locket Full of Love, which reached number 21. The label expected more. When it didn't break into the top 20, they tightened control. She recorded some softer, pop-influenced tracks, but Decca blocked them, fearing they were too different. By the end of the year, they were ready to drop her entirely. Her career almost ended right there. She kept appearing on TV shows like The Country Palace, often singing Loretta's songs. Even when she smiled on camera, she cried when the lights went off. She felt trapped between being a sister and being an artist. In 2019, she said those years were some of the most painful in her life. By 1974, she had one last single with Decca. Nobody's Child reached number 21 in November. It was a quiet ending to a long struggle. She left Decca in December. That decision could have destroyed everything. Nashville was known for blacklisting artists who walked away, but she left anyway because she knew she had to. Crystal Gayle stepped into United Artists in 1974 with a quiet kind of hope, and right away, Alan Reynolds saw something in her voice that others kept missing. They worked closely, shaping the sound of her breakthrough album Crystal in 1976. When the lead single I'll Get Over You hit number 1 in April 1976, everything shifted. It was the first time she moved out from Loretta Lynn's shadow, and people noticed. The smooth, jazzy sound surprised Nashville, since no other female country artist had ever taken that style all the way to the top. By the end of the year, the album had sold more than 500,000 copies and pushed her into a new lane. Critics were stunned. One moment, she was Loretta's little sister, and then suddenly, she wasn't. The success didn't just help her career. It changed the way Nashville thought about mixing country and pop, and it opened a door she kept walking through. Things moved even faster with We Must Believe in Magic in 1977. The album had 4 top 10 singles, but the world couldn't stop talking about one track. Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue came out in October 1977 and took over the country charts for 4 straight weeks. It climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, which almost no country artist managed back then. The polished sound shocked the industry. She became the first female country artist to sell more than 1 million copies of an album. And by 1978, global sales reached 2.5 million. But not everyone was cheering. Nashville purists were furious. Some critics called the song pop garbage. Newspapers ran dramatic headlines like, "Is Country Dead?" The backlash grew even louder when the song got a Grammy nomination because now country and pop fans were fighting over her at the same time. Her rise came with more pressure than anyone expected. Even though "We Must Believe in Magic" made her a superstar, the criticism stayed loud. Some radio stations banned her music, claiming she had abandoned her roots. The album passed 1 million units worldwide, but the rumors about her image and style followed her from show to show. In 1978, "Ready for the Times to Get Better" reached #1, and she became the first country artist to headline her own HBO concert special. Her floor-length hair became famous too, almost like its own brand. It also gave tabloids something to mock. She later admitted that all the attention exhausted her. During a 1978 European tour, she pushed through vocal strain until she nearly collapsed. The fame looked glamorous, but she was paying for it behind the scenes. In 1978, she hit a level of crossover fame few country artists ever reached. "When I Dream" came out in July, and the title track climbed to #3 on the country chart and #84 on the pop chart, she felt the shift again. Then, "Talking in Your Sleep" reached #1 on the country chart and numbered 18 on the pop chart before the year ended. By December 1978, she had sold more than 5 million records. Most country singers never reached the pop audience at all. She went beyond that. TV appearances, tours across the country, magazine covers, all of it flowed together until people started calling her the Queen of Crossover Country. Her Grammy win in February 1978 at the 20th annual ceremony should have been the perfect moment. She took home Best Female Country Vocal Performance for "Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue." The song had already spent 3 weeks at #1 on the country charts and reached #2 on the pop charts. She became the first woman to push a crossover hit that high. But then her gown and her hair got tangled while she accepted the award. Millions of people watched her struggle to free herself live on CBS. It became one of the most talked about wardrobe accidents in Grammy history. She laughed about it later, but in that moment she just had to smile and keep going. By January 1979, she had another #1 with "Why Have You Left, the One You Left Me For." It stayed there for 2 weeks. And in November 1979, she hosted her own NBC primetime special called Crystal. More than 15 million people tuned in, which was huge for a country music show back then. Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers appeared as guests, adding even more hype. Meanwhile, backstage, tension grew as reports spread about her demanding stage setups and lighting cues. The show still lifted her even higher in the public eye, even if the behind-the-scenes stories hinted at stress building up around her. Then came the duet that almost didn't happen. In 1982, she recorded "You and I" with Eddie Rabbitt for her True Love album. It turned into a wedding staple, topping both the country and adult contemporary charts. It stayed at #1 on the country chart for 4 weeks and held the top spot on adult contemporary for 6 weeks. But during the recording process, she and Rabbitt argued about the vocal mix. He wanted more of his voice in the chorus, while she wanted balance. The arguments got so heated that the producer stepped in more than once, just to keep the session alive. Somehow the tension turned into harmony when the song finally came out, and it became one of the defining romantic tracks of the decade. Her CMA wins in 1977 and 1978 created a different kind of pressure. Winning Female Vocalist of the Year twice in a row was a major achievement, but it quietly strained things at home. In a 1980 Rolling Stone interview, She admitted her success created a little distance between her and Loretta Lynn. They loved each other deeply, but the speed of Crystal's rise had changed the air between them. She felt proud and guilty at the same time, and it reminded her that fame touches more than just the person holding the trophy. Her world kept expanding. In 1981, she joined Tom Waits for the soundtrack of One from the Heart. She worked on it from October 1980 through September 1981, recording songs that carried Waits's rough edge mixed with her smooth voice. Francis Ford Coppola had first considered Bette Midler, but timing didn't work out. Waits said he chose Crystal after hearing her sing Cry Me a River on the radio. The soundtrack earned a Golden Globe nomination and even an Academy Award nomination for Original Music Score. It was unusual, dreamy, and sometimes strange, but people still talk about it because the contrast between their voices created something unforgettable. Then came Cage the Songbird in 1983. The album reached number 5 on the Billboard Country Album Chart and gave her more hits, including The Sound of Goodbye and Turning Away. The title track carried a darker tone. Listeners felt it right away. The lyrics hinted at exhaustion and pressure, and many believed it reflected her life on the road and the strain of trying to balance her marriage with constant touring. It became one of her most personal works, revealing a quiet hurt beneath her smooth image. In 1985, she stepped into Hollywood again with Tough Guys, appearing alongside Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. She performed the song Tough Guys while tabloids spun stories about her and Douglas. They claimed the two were having an affair, and the rumor spread quickly, even with no evidence. She denied it again and again, but the gossip followed her throughout the press tour. It was supposed to be a fun cameo, yet it turned into another reminder of how fast fame could twist things. Crystal Gayle stepped into a new world in 1988 when she moved to Capitol Records and released Nobody's Angel. It was her first album after leaving MCA, and the title track still reached number 22 on the Billboard Country Singles Chart. It became her last top 40 hit for a while. The album itself only climbed to number 63 on the Billboard Country Albums Chart, and sales slipped below 200,000. It was a sharp drop from the heights she once reached. Critics called the project overproduced because of its soft mix of jazz and country. Fans felt the shift too, because the sound moved away from what had shaped her earlier identity. Jim Ed Norman now handled production, and this change created a distance between her and her longtime audience. You could feel that the industry was changing around her, and she was trying to find her place again as country music tastes moved in new directions. 2 years later, she found a brief spark when her cover of Ain't No Sunshine landed on the soundtrack of 3:10 to Yuma in 1990. The song reached number 41 on the adult contemporary chart, and for a moment, it felt like she had stepped back into a wider spotlight. Still, the release carried tension behind the scenes. Questions from the creative side surrounded the recording, and the attention brought more stress than joy. It showed how hard it had become to balance her history with the demands of a fast-moving industry. In 1991, she signed with Warner Bros. And released Ain't Gonna Worry. The song I Don't Want to Lose Your Love reached number 26 on the country chart, but the pressure around her continued to grow. Label politics made touring difficult. She had to travel with lesser-known acts, and the energy of her shows shifted. Then, in 1992, her challenges grew heavier. 2 of her tour buses broke down during a run across the United States, forcing her to pour money into repairs and cancel shows. The lost income nearly pushed her into financial collapse. She had to borrow money and rethink how she wanted to move through the business. It became a wake-up call, reminding her that even seasoned stars have to rebuild when the ground under them moves. Her focus shifted again in 1993, when she signed with New Vision Records and created a gospel album titled Someday. It came after a health scare involving her voice, and she reached toward faith-based music as a form of healing. The sound blended gospel and rock, and that mixture surprised many listeners. Some admired the risk. Others felt unsure about the direction. The album reached number 63 on the Billboard Christian chart and settled into modest success, showing the difficulty of crossing into a new style after years in another lane. Capitol tried to bring her legacy audience back in 1995 with a re-released greatest hits album that featured a new song called Wild Things. But the world around her was shifting again. Grunge ruled the 90s. Alternative rock filled radio. Country pop crossovers struggled for space. Crystal later said this era left her feeling lost, and the weight of that silence pulled her into a long pause. Almost 2 years passed without new recordings as she tried to recover her sense of direction. Then, in 1999, something unexpected happened. She returned with Heart and Soul on the Coke label. It was a jazz and standards album that featured her version of Georgia on My Mind. Fans were stunned because the sound pushed far from her country roots. The surprise turned into something meaningful because the album reached number 12 on the Jazz Albums chart. Critics praised her smooth control and her ability to turn classics into fresh moments. It showed that reinvention was still possible even after decades in the public eye. Her career reached a beautiful milestone in 2000 when she finally became a member of the Grand Ole Opry. She performed Brown Eyes Blue at her induction, and the moment felt like a bridge between her long history and the honor she had waited for. The night was emotional and unforgettable, even through the complicated family tension that surrounded her life at the time. Her voice carried a sense of arrival. In 2003, she released All the Way, an album shaped with the help of her son, Christos. It included a cover of Ribbon of Darkness that reached number 55 on the country charts. The project mixed new songs and familiar standards, showing her steady musical range. But in 2005, she faced another challenge when she underwent throat surgery. She had to cancel Opry shows and spend months recovering. She shared pieces of her struggle with her fans, and that honesty brought them closer to her. The setback reminded everyone that a voice, even a legendary one, is a fragile gift. She kept moving forward. In 2006, she joined Emmylou Harris for the Red Hot and Blue AIDS Benefit Tour. Together, they performed Cole Porter classics and helped raise more than $1 million for HIV and AIDS causes. A small online clip from the tour sparked unexpected chatter about her appearance, and people argued more about her hairstyle than her performance. It was strange and unfair, yet she stayed focused on the cause. The noise faded while the impact of the fundraiser remained. She reached another emotional chapter in 2019 with the album You Don't Know Me. It honored songwriter Cindy Walker, and her grandson Elijah played a part in the project. The album reached number 10 on the Bluegrass Albums chart. While recording Miss Molly, she felt memories of her father rise inside her. It made the sessions heavy and healing at the same time. The blending of family and music brought her story full circle. Her personal life carried its own storms. She married Bill Gatzimos in 1971, and together they built a long marriage that mixed public success with private challenges. In the 80s, the strain of legal battles and career pressure wore on them. They still managed to protect their children, Catherine and Christos, from cameras and gossip, living a quiet family life behind the bright stage lights. It was a double life that demanded strength and trust. The pain grew deeper in October 2022 When her sister Loretta Lynn passed away at age 90, Crystal paused touring for months. She spoke openly about how Loretta had shaped her, inspired her, and at times overshadowed her. The grief was heavy and slow. Her tribute captured what she felt. The world lost a legend. We lost a sister. Love you, Loretta. And those words stayed with her audience. Through all these years, people whispered about her struggles and tried to guess what she was facing behind the curtain. That is something many longtime artists experience as they age. Rumors come and go. What remains steady is the work, the years of shows, and her commitment to keep going. Her role as a mother brought its own challenges. Fame pushed her family into shadows when she wished they could have lived a more simple life. She sought therapy in the 90s to balance the stress of fame with the needs of her children. She did not want them to feel lost in her career. That effort shows how much she valued home, even when the world demanded her attention. She also carried her own quiet battles. After losing her mother to Alzheimer's in 1981, she quietly supported causes related to the illness. She rarely talked about her grief or her mental health, yet close friends have said she had periods of doubt and loneliness. She kept performing and kept giving, even when she felt empty inside. That strength shaped her legacy as much as her music. Her voice faced new challenges in later years. By 2019, doctors diagnosed her with spasmodic dysphonia, a condition that made it difficult to control her vocal cords. The problem forced her to protect her voice carefully during shows. At 74, she still performs. She still steps on stage with the same grace she had decades ago. But she also carries the weight of a career that demanded everything from her. Even with more than 40 million records sold and a net worth of around $10 million, she knows how often young artists sign contracts that do not protect them. She has spoken about how Nashville can be unforgiving and how important it is for new musicians to understand their rights. Her own early deals taught her lessons she never forgot. In 2022, she also surprised people when she said she sometimes wanted to cut her famous floor-length hair. Fans reacted instantly. More than 50,000 people signed petitions asking her to keep it. She joked that cutting it would feel like losing a part of herself, yet she also admitted how heavy it felt to carry that image for so long. It showed the tug-of-war between public expectation and private comfort. Now, as she shares fewer public moments, people wonder what she is planning next. Some say she is preparing a final set of recordings. Others believe she is stepping back to rest after a lifetime on the road. She has never confirmed any of it. All we know is that her story is layered with beauty and hardship. Her voice touched generations. Her quiet strength carried her through storms. And her legacy keeps inspiring younger artists who see in her a path of courage, reinvention, and heart.